Hello, hello. Welcome to today's live stream. We are trying to create a podcast app from scratch using React Native on this live stream, and all these episodes go to YouTube as well. This is where we are at. Um, we have a search bar. In last episode, we set up a search bar, and the search button clear button shows up if you start typing. This was set up using hooks. The search bar itself has a local state which causes the search icon to show up. We also set up React. We have also by now set up React navigation and a few other things like React Native vector icons and all of that. So in today's stream, what we're going to do is set up Redux. Okay, we need to go search an API and find the results when you click on that search icon, right? And I would eventually like to use the context API to keep the state of the search results local to the discovery screen, which is the screen you see right now. But eventually, but as an initial setup, I'm going to just set it up on Redux so that the search results are in a global state somewhere, and we can just use that, for now. It's easy to move from a Redux state into into context, and we'll do that in another episode. All right. So where are we at? So let's set up Redux. This is actually the third day we're trying to set up Redux. The first day, the stream messed up, hopefully, and the second day too, and hopefully, I hope it doesn't happen today. I have changed my internet provider, and I hope to see better results with this today. Okay, so let's go to the discovery screen. This is what the discovery screen looks like right now. There is nothing here. There's just a search bar which you see on screen, and we use useState to figure out what the text value of the search itself is. And the search bar actually expects a callback for on search, right? This is what will happen when you click on the button itself. So let's make a small on search that does nothing, and we'll pass that in as an initial thing. Okay, our main goal is to set up Redux today. Sorry. Okay, what are we going to do? Let's go find out how to set up how do you set up Redux at all. Redux.org. Let's just go to Redux's website. It is redux.js.org. Okay. Get started, and you just install using this. All right, we can do that. Yarn add Redux. I think to use Redux with what happened? Oh right, I'm on a different version of Node, I think. Yeah. So I use 10 point something point 0 for work, so I have to switch to 12.0 for this project. I keep forgetting about that. Yarn add Redux, and I think we need React Redux as well to use Redux with React, because you can't just use Redux is just a separate library to manage state. It doesn't really care about React especially, so you have to add yarn add React Redux, right? Okay, so we have both Redux and React Redux. Let's start setting those up. So here's a small overview of what Redux is, right? I should rather just show you. Redux flow diagram should be good enough. Yeah. Where is the diagram? It's not on this page. We're looking for this one, yeah. This guy. So all of your state, like for example, let's talk about the search bar, okay? All of your state is within the object called the store, right? And the store provides has a bunch of functions that can change the state. I don't think you can see the diagram itself. I'm sorry. This should be better. So all of your state is within the store, and the store has a bunch of functions called reducers, which are the only things that are allowed to change state. Okay, let's get that in first. How do you get a reducer to change the state? You dispatch an action. So what is an action? An action is just a simple object that says what type of action it is, and if it has any payload, it has that as well. So it's just a simple object, a plain old object, and it's given to the dispatcher, which is a function, and that function decides which reducer to call, and the reducer then changes state. And then when state changes, the way React is set up, the view is rendered automatically. So within the, say for example, in the view, there's a button like the search button, right? And you click on the search button, that dispatches an action. The action goes to the dispatcher decides what to do with the action, and then calls the reducer with the action's payload to change the state itself. This ensures that data is always flowing in one direction. You don't have the reducers are supposed to be pure functions that just change state, nothing else. So you don't have anything going back from the reducer saying, okay, this reducer was called, let me do this, this, and this. No, the reducer only changes state, and that's it. So all of your business logic can just be sitting in here, and your view is just a representation of state at that point. Yeah. Okay. So we need to set up the Redux store as the first order of business. Right, so let me just create a new folder here called Redux. And how do you set up Redux? Let's go look at the documentation. A basic example is you need to create store from Redux, and you need a bunch of reducers. Okay, so import create store from Redux. Right, and this what you see here, this function is a reducer. It takes the current state and an action and decides what to do with it, right? And then you create a store using the create store function, and you pass it the reducers. Let's just create a very basic reducer. So one of the first actions I want to set up is when the first view of the application is rendered, right? When the application is ready, right? So this is going to be the function. This is going to be the type of the action. And what do you need to do in that? We need to do, so a reducer is expected to return some state, and also the changed value. What's wrong here? Oh no. And ready. Let's call this ready and return that to true. Okay. Let's give it an initial with ready is equal to false, right? And default is return state. Now that's the reducer, and we'll create a store with this reducer, right? And that's it. We return the store, return export the store, actually export default store. Right, that sets up our, that's it, that's how Redux is set up. This is ready now. The complexity in this comes from actually splitting up these states into multiple smaller states. You don't want to write all of your reducers and create the store in one file, right? So we'll get to that. Let's just tie this up nicely with our one of our screens, right? Where is this? This is our main screen. And what is app container? App container comes from navigation. Oh, that is not good. So what we should do is we should have a root container that runs all of these other important logic, like, you know, setting up the store and dispatching initial actions and all of that. Root container is whatever, doesn't care, and export default root container. And this boy can now, instead of this guy, we take it here, import, and this boy can now do app container, right? And we ask import root container from yeah. So we set up store here. We'll import, actually there's one thing I don't want to do. I don't want to export the store itself. I would rather export a function that returns the store, you know. That means I have control over when the store is created. Does that make sense? So this returns an object with the store, right? And I can now do import create store from my own Redux index.js. And here I can go const store is create. Actually, it'll be wrapped in an object, right? Is create store. And how do you use this again? You use this as react-redux, right? You do this, and then you get a provider from react-redux, and then use that. Okay. So you do import provider from react-redux. You wrap your container. Oh wait, what are you still doing here? Oh, this is not where we want this. We want this in the app, right? Import create store from redux index.js, and we create the store here. Did I press insert accidentally? Yeah. And you want to wrap your root container in with the provider. The provider ensures that the store and state are available throughout to all the children that are below this, right? Like that. Let's save everything, see what happens. Alright, there's one thing we forgot. The refresh won't do anything, you know, because we are not running our server. npm run start. That should work now. So I saw yesterday that the new React Native blog new release has come out, you know, and that means a lot because something amazing has happened yesterday. Something called fast refresh. God bless you, Dan Abramov. Refresh is a pain for us, and so something is seen. We'll update to this in one of our live streams. Yeah. So where are we at? We got our store set up. So now we should be able to access the ready variable that we set in our state and reducer. We should be able to access that, right? Let's go do that. And we're going to be using hooks and pure functions throughout. So I guess you can learn that as well on the way. How do you get data out of the store? You use selector. Okay. So let's get that. Import use selector from where? From Redux? react-redux. Okay. Right. And then you can do const ready is use selector state dot ready. Right. And let's just render this. Actually, let's do this. Background color is, if ready, then it's green, otherwise it's black. Oh, come on. And let's just add this as a add-on to this. Background color. Right? So what this array does is essentially it combines all the styles together, whatever is passed into it. So we're passing styles.container, and we're also passing in this background color, right? That overrides whatever is inside. I think it overrides from left to right, so it's going to override whatever background color is in there. So if ready is true, then it's going to be green, otherwise it's going to be black. Okay, ready is not true, so you see the difference. We want ready to be true eventually, so we'll use root container for that. Use effect, and as I said, I might have mentioned before, you can use effect to do stuff that you used to do in component didn't mount. You want things to happen once the component is ready. So that's essentially what we want to do. We want to do when the component has rendered for the first time, we want something to happen. And the thing that we want to happen is we want to dispatch. What do we want to dispatch? We want to dispatch an action with this type. Right? So how do we get dispatch? You do use dispatch from react-redux, and you get the dispatch function. We call the dispatch function dispatch type set app ready, right? And that's it. The first time the application renders, nothing happened. What did I do wrong? Blah, 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 blah. This should have worked. The reducer is this, initials, wait. Let's do that. And we set ready to true. Does this even work? The simplest way to do this is do this. Yeah, that works. So it is dispatching, all right. Did we set up our reducer properly? Yeah, we set up our reducers properly as well. Let's save everything and let's go look at Discover. What did we mess up in Discover? let's just look at what state is. Yeah, I know. Don't at me for. Oh, we do have ready, and it does get set to false, and then set to what? What? How is that working? All right, but oh, right. The object itself is true, so it doesn't matter, right? The object is it is getting a value because we see false, right? It's never set to true. I wonder why it's never set to true. Set app ready is the thing we called. Yes, set app ready with the space at the end. God damn it. There. Oh. To deal with things like this, we'll be using a few other libraries, and I added a space in the end, and the switch case didn't work. So you see the problem. So that works. Ready is true, and that's why it's green. Let's make it a little more interesting. Set timeout. I set this to true after a second, yeah. And I don't want this. What's taking so long? React Native and its refresh, I tell you. So I can see on my OBS screen that this boy is reacting, but not on the emulator itself. Oh, come on. Just gonna shut it down once. Kill it. Bye. Let's just restart that. Don't mind this, but I don't know how to start the AVD manager directly. Yeah. I have to go through Android Studio to start. Sorry. While that is starting, I could talk to you about how we are going to simplify this whole thing, right? So we're going to use a few libraries. The first of those is React Actions, it's called. Utils, something of that sort. Redux Actions, sorry. We're going to use this library called Redux Actions that lets us combine a particular type of state into one file, so that we don't have a huge index.js file with all the reducers together. This boy allows us to write this neatly, and also maybe reduce the typo errors that I just did. Yeah. Okay. So how do we set that up? Let's just get AVD running first. AVD manager, and come back. Do you guys see it? Oh, it doesn't. It it hasn't rendered yet. I have to go to settings and do some shenanigans. There, you see it now. Come back and refresh properly. Right, now we have a set timeout of how much did we set it to? 1 second. So it sets ready equal to true after 1 second. Right, let's use let's split this up. We don't want this to like show up a big huge state in one file. We want to split this up. So the first thing we want to do is create a new state. Usually what people do is create all the states within the Redux folder, right? I don't want to do that. I want to create the states outside because these states are going to be used by context as well. And it makes it easier to move things around, and it also makes things apparent in terms of their context, where they are. So if it's inside the Redux folder, you expect it to be part of the Redux store, but that's not going to be the case for all the states, right? So let's just create a startup state.js, and it's going to have a initial state, right? Ready false. One thing that we're going to need is actually I want to talk about early on is immutability. We don't want our state to be editable outside of the Redux store. Nobody should be able to just change values in the store, in the state. This is important because what we get from this JavaScript passes every object by reference, right? So if you change a value, especially deeply nested values, that gets reflected everywhere, right? I'm sorry about the background noise. I live in a very green area. Okay, what we're going to use is we should use an immutability library, and the one I really like is seamless immutable. I can't spell immutable. Anyway, this lets us create immutable states, and if somebody tries to modify them outside, like if somebody tries to modify them without creating a new object, it freaks out, right? So you can't just change values. You have to replace the object to change the value itself. So how do you install this? I think you just do yarn add seamless immutable, right? Come on. There, we have seamless immutable now, and I want my initial state to be created using seamless immutable. Go away. Yeah, that makes sense. I like this. Did we install Redux actions yet? We didn't. Yarn add Redux actions. There you go. All right, we have Redux actions too. How do you use Redux actions? I always forget. You do create actions, handle actions, and combine actions. Okay. Import create actions from Redux actions, and let's just call these actions create actions. And you need to do set app ready, right? And it takes nothing, and it actually should take ready value. So what we're doing essentially is creating a function that returns an object rather than creating the object directly like we did here, right? Now we just call the function that returns an object, and that lets us have some data transformations in the object. right? You can, like, for example, if you were like creating a list, and then you can do the list that is actually passed to the reducer is transformed some way, like list.filter or whatever, you know. You get what I'm saying? That's actions. We can like take set app ready is actions. So what this has done, what create actions does, is it creates an object with you give it completely capital with, I don't know what these are called. I keep forgetting what these are called. Anyway, you create these action names. This is the type itself now, right? Like this capital as the one that went into the switch case. That is this, right? And then create actions converts that into something that looks like this. All the underscores are replaced, and the first, everything is lowercase except the first letters, and the first word is completely lowercase, right? As you might notice, we are not using strings anymore, and so that's the nice thing about this. Then we handle the actions, right? I'm sure I'll just be back in a second. Somebody's at the door. Just a second. And I'm back. So we need to do handle actions. I'm sure, I don't know if we should be doing handle actions. Essentially, we can combine action. We should do handle actions actually. Let's get handle actions as well. Handle actions, right? That's what it's called. Yeah. What's broken? What's wrong? Oh, anyway, handle actions, and we go set app ready does what? It has to do something with state, right? So it has to do return. As I was saying, you can't just directly change state anymore like we did in this reducer, this guy, right? You're just returning a new state. What we need to do is call state.merge. Where do you get state from? I forget. Right. I would like to look at a few other examples. Usage, API introduction. Handle actions. So reducer map and default state, right? So it gets this, and then it has to return. Oh, it's a function. Cool. So it gets a state, and then it gets an action, right? And this action actually has a payload, and that payload has our ready. Okay, and we go state.merge ready. That's it. Okay, so here's what you're doing. Whenever somebody dispatches an action with this type, it goes into this, and then it calls this function with the payload, which has the ready equal to true or false or whatever, and then state.merge, which is an immutable JS thing, changes the state to have this, and that is returned, right? So we just do export default actions because we want to just call those actions for example, actions.setAppReady and all of that. And we also export the reducer, right? We should export this for like test cases and all of that, just to check things if you want. I think we're good. Yeah, we're good. This is a startup state, right? In this Redux, what we need to do now is combine reducers. Right? We're going to have multiple reducers for different types of states. So this reducer is now going to be combine reducers. Oh right, we have to pass initial actions to this boy, initial state to this boy. Otherwise it complains. I've seen this before. Anyway, let's call this startup, and let's import our state dot startup state dot js dot reducer. That's what we want. And we want the reducer, and combine reducers combines all the different types of reducers into the thing, into a common big reducer, and it creates this. Right? What has changed because of this essentially is that, first of all, let's change this. We don't want to like call types with strings and all of that. So we'll just do startup actions from states.startup state, and we'll go dispatch startup actions dot set app ready true. Okay. Discover screen now needs to do instead of just directly accessing ready, because of combined reducers, as you can see here, because of combined reducers, the state has, the ready object has, ready boolean has moved from state.ready to state.startup.ready. Okay. And I think we are good to go. That should, all of this should just work. Let's just see. There. We're back to where we started. We have a startup state now, and we have set up Redux. Okay. One last thing that I would like to do is we'll do it when we set up middlewares. So middlewares are these functions that intercept actions and do things on them. Once we set up middleware, I don't want to set up middleware in this index.js. I want them to be set up separately, and middlewares and enhancers separately. So the create store object from this file will go into a separate file, and then we'll set up middlewares there. That will export the function which we'll call here, and this will export another function that creates the store. Things are getting complicated, I know, but that's okay. So what did we do today? We have now set up a state called startup state, right? It starts with an initial state with ready is false. And then it sets up a bunch of actions, right? It sets up its reducers, which accept actions, and then change the state that was given to them. And we combined all of those reducers into one reducer, right? And we created a store using those reducers. We don't need this boy anymore. We combined those reducers into one reducer, and then we created a store using that. And in our app, we essentially wrapped up our whole application with a provider component that makes the store that we're using a global thing. So you can always access the store object, the state, from anywhere, right? What else do we need? We have also, as an example, and I think we'll use this. I'll move this out of the timeout. We don't need this to be within the timeout, right? We set up a effect that when the first container is rendered completely, we dispatch an action that says the application is ready, and the Redux state changes according to that. And yeah, you set up Redux properly. Tomorrow, what we'll do is this discover screen, right? We're going to add a list here with the search results. right? And these search results are going to sit in the Redux store. You're going to do some async fetches to get that data. You're going to populate the state. You're allowed to change. We are also going to handle if somebody cancels the request in the middle of the search. What shall we do? And all of that. Okay. I think this green looks better than the black. I don't know. Anyway, so this is where we'll stop today. Okay. And today's episode is going to be available on YouTube on my channel, Infinite Solenoid. And you have Redux ready. We'll probably use Redux tomorrow. Okay. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.